The last sighting of the men's car on the night they were killed was at 6 p.m. when Rolfe dropped his girlfriend off at the Lakeside shopping centre at Thurrock. Detectives believe he then picked up Tate and Tucker and headed north along the A130 towards Chelmsford. This was rush hour and the metallic blue Range Rover, registration F424NPE, would have had to stop traffic as it turned across the main carriageway into the remote bridleway near Rettendon where the killing took place. It could have held you up. Did you see it? What time was it? Did you notice anything unusual that night?
Now, over the years, many people have posed that very same question. Why did no one see the Range Rover entering Workhouse Lane, this isolated farm track in Rettendon, Essex, on the evening Tucker, Tate and Rolfe were killed? So in this video, I'll be taking you through two eyewitness accounts that describe a Range Rover stopping traffic on the evening of December 6th. The plot twist, however, is that although this vehicle is seen around the time of the murders, it doesn't appear to be the Range Rover driven by Craig Rolfe. Take a listen to the following. The following police statement is from Richard Alfred Mantle, dated the 24th of the 1st, 1996. I'm the above described person and I reside at the address Overleaf. I work at the Ministry of Defence Police HQ at Wethersfield, Essex. Most days I travel to and from work along the A130 between the Rettendon Turnpike and the A12. On a day in early December 1995, whose date I cannot recall precisely, I was driving home from work along the A130. I passed a farm on the near side and then climbed a curving rise towards Rettendon village. I saw facing me on the opposite side of the road a dark-coloured Range Rover indicating to cross the road and positioned at a slight angle as a confident driver might do who knew a turning well. I stopped to allow the vehicle to pass across in front of me and down a track to my left. I now know this to be called Millhouse Lane. The driver raised his right hand in thanks, and I recall he was wearing something white, probably a shirt. I cannot recall if there was anyone in the front passenger seat. As the vehicle passed in front of me, I recall there was a passenger in the rear near side of the vehicle. I believe the colour of the vehicle was possibly dark green. I had not noticed this lane before, therefore the event was unusual, and that is why I remembered it. I logged my times of departure and arrival to and from work and to and from home. On the 6th of December 1995, I arrived home at 18:12 hours. It takes about 15 to 17 minutes, depending on traffic, to travel from Millhouse Lane to my home, so I would have been at the lane between 17:55 hours and 1800. It was several days after the murders of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe when I saw a police notice by the roadside. That is when I realised where Millhouse Lane was. It was some time later that I heard on television that the police wished to hear from the driver who had stopped to let the Range Rover cross, and I contacted the incident room shortly afterwards. Right, so let's take a look at where this eyewitness account actually took place, because in this eyewitness account he mentions a Millhouse Lane. Now, as I say, there's no Millhouse Lane whatsoever in Rettendon. You'll understand as we go through his statements that he actually means Workhouse Lane. Okay, so let's start with the statement here. He mentions the following. I was driving home from work along the A130. Now, back in 1995, this road here was the main through road, the main A road, the A130 through to Southend. So this is the road he was travelling on. On the left-hand side here, we've got the gun club. We've got the gun club connected to White House Farm. As we move further down the road here, we have a farm on the near side, White House Farm. As we go further forward, you'll notice as we take this right here, we've actually got the lane where the Range Rover turned down, just where that Toyota is situated there. Then you'll notice that the road sort of climbs. It goes upwards towards Rettendon village. So let's just take it back. Let's take it back to the actual lane, and we'll continue on with his statement here. So I was driving home from work along the A130. I passed a farm on the near side, exactly as shown in the street view there, White House Farm, and then climbed the curving rise towards Rettendon village. I saw facing me on the opposite side of the road a dark-coloured Range Rover indicating to cross the road and positioned at a slight angle as a confident driver might do who knew a turning well. I stopped to allow the vehicle to pass across in front of me and down a track to my left. So again, near side, left-hand side. He saw a Range Rover coming from this direction down the hill. It turns into the lane, exactly where you can see that Toyota there. So he's basically came from this direction, past the farm. The Range Rover is most likely where that coloured section is. The Range Rover's coming downhill, most likely stops in that sort of location there. It's got its indicators on. This guy is coming from here. He stops probably round about here, allows the Range Rover to pull down Workhouse Lane. Let's continue. I stopped to allow the vehicle to pass across in front of me and down a track to my left. I now notice to be Millhouse Lane. Well, it's not, it's Workhouse Lane. The driver raised his right hand in thanks, and I recall that he was wearing something white, probably a shirt. I cannot recall if there was anyone in the front passenger seat. As the vehicle passed in front of me, I recall there was a passenger in the rear near side of the vehicle. So the near side is the passenger side, the rear passenger side. I believe the colour of the vehicle was possibly dark green. I had not noticed this lane before, therefore the event was unusual, and that is why I remembered it. So we've got a vehicle here, possibly on December the 6th, pulling down Workhouse Lane 45 minutes or so before Tucker, Tate and Rolfe's arrival. Quite interesting. And what also stands out to me is that this guy actually logs his arrival and departure times both to and from work and also to and from home. So it states the following here. I log my times of departure and arrival to and from work and to and from home. On the 6th of December 1995, I arrived home at 18:12 hours. It takes about 15 to 17 minutes, depending on traffic, to travel from Millhouse Lane, which we know is Workhouse Lane, to my home. So I would have been at the lane between 17:55 hours and 1800. Now we know that Tucker, Tate and Rolfe don't arrive at Workhouse Lane until just before 7. And we also know that this can't be Tucker, Tate and Rolfe inside this particular Range Rover due to the phone evidence. They're making telephone calls. Some of these individuals are still at home. It can't be Tucker, Tate and Rolfe who is observed if this is indeed on December the 6th. So what is a separate Range Rover doing pulling down Workhouse Lane potentially on December the 6th, 45 minutes to an hour before Tucker, Tate and Rolfe's arrival? Is this a vehicle, checking the lay of the land, checking that the gate's locked, maybe looking for somewhere to hide the vehicle? You'll see what I mean by this little cut in here. Did they pull into there and hide the vehicle waiting for Tucker, Tate and Rolfe to arrive, or looking for somewhere suitable to leave their vehicle? I don't know. Now, one of the theories that we've had in this case is that there is the possibility of a second Range Rover or a second vehicle connected to these murders. Now, someone made a very good point to me the other day regarding the crime scene. He said, the back of the Range Rover, there's a lot of footfall there. There's a lot of melted ice and snow. Is it beyond the realms of possibility that a second vehicle pulled up behind the Range Rover? Penning it in, keeping it confined to that particular location. And think to yourself, what is more feasible here? The story has told in court that there was this man hiding in a bush, as in Jack Womes, in the freezing cold, pitch black. He's never shot anybody before. The Range Rover pulls up. He jumps out the bushes and executes this crime to an almost perfect standard. Or is it more feasible that there was a second vehicle, that Tucker, Tate and Rolfe pulled up to the locked 5-bar gate and a vehicle pulls up behind? Again, we've had so many eyewitness accounts of a second vehicle, whether that's a blue Range Rover or a green Range Rover. There are so many eyewitness accounts in the lead up to Tucker, Tate and Rolfe's murders. It makes you wonder, there has to be something in this. There has to be a connection here with a secondary vehicle. Now, what I also find interesting about this particular eyewitness account is that we don't really have a date, do we? It's sometime in early December. So it makes you wonder, if this isn't December the 6th, is this someone looking for somewhere suitable to lure Tucker, Tate and Rolfe? Someone who's looking for a farm track, checking the local lanes, this, that and the other, maybe a lane that they've used in the past for some sort of criminal activity. Is this the killer looking for a suitable location in the lead up to Tucker, Tate and Rolfe's murders? Is that a possibility? Now it gets a little bit better because we also have another eyewitness account, if this is on the 6th, just an hour later. Take a listen to the following. The following statement is from Raymond Alfred Wright, dated the 13th of December, 1995. I am the owner of a Ford Escort Estate motor vehicle, index Lima 1270 Juliet November, colour red. On Wednesday the 6th of December 1995, my wife and myself attended a funeral, and as such we had left our young son at my mother's house in Pitsea. The funeral we attended was in Reigate, and I had to drop my wife and mother-in-law off in Hornchurch. After this, I carried on to Pitsea, where I picked my son up. The route that I would travel from Pitsea to Tolsant Darcy includes the A130 from the Sadler's Farm roundabout to the East Hanningfield turnoff. I do not know exactly what time it was that I picked my son up, but I am aware that I arrived home in Tolsant Darcy about 19:20 to 19:25 hours that evening. As I was travelling along the A130, I went through the Rettendon Turnpike in the direction of Chelmsford, when you come through the Rettendon village and into a de-restricted road area. The road then goes into a series of bends on a decline on the road. So this guy here, he's approaching from the opposite direction. He's approaching from the direction of the Range Rover. He's actually coming downhill. Because I'm a regular user of the road, I am aware that on these bends there is situated a farm shop and a gun club on the right-hand side of the road. And I am aware that there could be vehicles waiting to turn right. As I entered this decline, I became aware that the vehicles in front of me had slowed down. This would have been about 250 foot earlier than I would have anticipated stopping. So what he's saying here is that he's a regular user of this road. He's well aware that on the right-hand side is White House Farm, also the gun club, and occasionally there are vehicles that turn into the farm. But on this occasion, he's had to stop earlier. I slowly caught up with the vehicles in front, but I had to brake quite heavily in the end because I had anticipated that any vehicle would be turning into the farm. I then stopped in the line of traffic, and I believe I was either 2 or 3 cars from the front of the line. I believe I was stationary for approximately 10 seconds when an oncoming vehicle left a gap for the vehicle that was turning right to cut across the traffic. As it did, I could see that the vehicle was a 4x4 vehicle, and because of the shape of the rear of the vehicle and the grille over the rear lights, my immediate reaction was that it was a Range Rover. I believe that the vehicle was dark in colour, and I think it was possibly green. I don't know why, but I think there was at least 3 people in the vehicle, and I think there may have been 4. I was aware that there was a driver of the vehicle who was in the dark, and a person who was sitting in the rear of the vehicle behind the driver's seat, so a different location compared to that previous eyewitness. He talks about a rear passenger in the near side, and this guy talks about a passenger behind the driver's side, behind the driver's seat. This person, who I believe to be a man because of his size, appeared to be bigger than the driver. He was wearing a light fawn-coloured upper garment. As the vehicle started to turn, I got the impression that the person in the back looked over his shoulder in the direction of the Rettendon Turnpike. So many people surmise that this sighting is actually Michael Steele. He's had a little peek over his shoulder, I hope there's no one following me down here before I kill him. That sort of thing. But what counts against that is that we're told that Steele and Wombs were wearing overalls. That's right, isn't it? They were wearing overalls. Now, I've never seen a pair of light fawn-coloured overalls in my life. So unless Michael Steele has a limited edition set of fawn-coloured overalls, then this can't really be Steele, can it? Now, it can't be Steele if it's also in a green Range Rover. He also talks about light guards on the rear of the vehicle. We know that the Range Rover driven by Tucker, Tate and Rolfe doesn't have rear light guards or a grille over the rear lights. It just simply doesn't. It's also not green. Let's continue. The vehicle then went into a farm track that I did not know existed, so very similar to that previous eyewitness. I then continued my journey along the A130, and because I wasn't aware of the farm track, I looked down the track and I could see the rear of the vehicle that had turned into the track. But I do not remember seeing the reflectors of any vehicles in front of it. I then continued my journey home. I believe the time that this incident occurred would have been between 1850 hours and 1900, because it normally takes me about 30 minutes to travel home from there. I don't believe I was more than 2 cars behind the Range Rover, so when it turned I would have been no more than 30 foot from the vehicle. I had a clear and unobstructed view of the vehicle for a period of approximately 2 seconds whilst it crossed in front of me. Although that area of the road is not lit, there was lighting from vehicles coming from the opposite direction. At the time I saw this, the traffic was quite heavy, especially traffic travelling towards Southend. I do wear glasses, but this is not necessary when driving. The man in the fawn-coloured garment in the rear of the vehicle appeared to be sat tight against the window and was even leaning with his right shoulder against the window. So again, another interesting observation there. This would suggest, wouldn't it, that there's actually multiple occupants in the rear of this Range Rover. Why would someone be sat there in the back, scrunched up against the window, unless there's multiple people inside, 2, possibly 3 rear seat passengers? So here we have, in combination, 2 eyewitness accounts that describe a possibly or potentially green Range Rover. Now, if that first eyewitness account did actually take place on the 6th, then there's quite a few interesting points to raise here. We've got a vehicle that turns down there about 6 o'clock and then seems to reappear again about an hour later. So again, is this the same vehicle? Did it travel down there on the first occasion to check that the gate was locked? Maybe find somewhere where they could leave the vehicle, like this little cut in here? Maybe leave the vehicle in this field? Walk down towards the Range Rover? I don't know. Is this the same vehicle? Did it then reappear an hour later and follow Tucker, Tate and Rolfe to the bottom of Workhouse Lane? Were Tucker, Tate and Rolfe there around, 7:15? This vehicle pulls up 5 minutes later. They've already been down there an hour earlier just to check, is there any dog walkers down here? Is the gate locked? What's the lay of the land? Has the gun club finished? And then they reappear, quite possibly with further occupants in the rear of that vehicle, an hour later, around about 7 o'clock. And it's interesting, isn't it, that on that first occasion, there's described 1 rear passenger. On this occasion, it appears that we have more. So as I say, did this vehicle go back to collect other people, then reappear an hour later? The Range Rover's down there about 6:45. The green Range Rover then pulls down at around 7 o'clock. Was this some sort of deal? Darren Nichols' early police interviews talk about, I'm meeting up with Michael Steele. We're going down there to have a deal with Pat. We're going down there to have a deal. There's other people already waiting. All this stuff previously discussed in Darren Nichols' interviews. And then this story put forward by Darren Nichols completely changes. It goes from, I finished work. Mick rang me up. He said, we're going down to have a deal with Pat, right? We're going down to have a deal with Pat. But don't worry, Jack's going to show you where to go. And there's some other people already waiting. We're going to have the deal. You're going to drive Jack away, this, that, and the other. So I've always surmised or, thought about the possibility of a third-party involvement. Are there other individuals involved in this crime that we simply don't know about? Because this part of Darren Nichols' story conveniently changes once it gets to court. It's all very streamlined. It's all about, they had this dud cannabis deal, they had this big falling out, there was threats against Mick's life. It all becomes very streamlined. But at the very start, there's other people mentioned, there's the deal mentioned, it all seems like, they're going down there for this deal, there's other people there waiting, maybe Steele and Wombs are facilitating this meet, and then something takes place. So it makes me wonder, is this green vehicle a separate vehicle to Tucker, Tate and Rolfe's Range Rover, and is it indeed connected in some way, shape or form to these murders?